Welcome back. Now for what's trending in true crime. Toxicology results suggest that the 3 Kansas City Chiefs fans who were found dead outside of their friend's house were under the influence of several substances. On January 9th, Ricky Johnson, David Harrington, and Clayton McGeeney were found dead in the backyard of a friend's rental home. 2 days after they were invited over, 2 days after they were invited over to watch the Chiefs game. Now, police have yet to confirm the initial toxicology report, which points to cocaine and fentanyl use between the high school friends. Now, Ricky Johnson's stepmother says that the few details they have are very troubling.
You're grieving, but you're also mad because you don't know all the circumstances, but you've been hearing bits and pieces, and what you're hearing isn't good. That they were left out in the cold, and then they had to wait for their bodies to thaw out for them to do an autopsy. That's something that you don't ever want to hear.
Now, the homeowner says he was unaware his friends were missing until police knocked on his door. He has not been charged in this case. Our question this morning, though, is could the homeowner be at fault here, or could he be another victim? Let's bring in our power panel. I have with me criminal defense attorney Don Malarczyk. He's also a professor of trial advocacy. Have with us law enforcement expert Sonny Slaughter and retired criminal defense attorney, the man who famously defended Jodi Arias, Kirk Nurmi. Great to see you all this morning. All right, so the homeowner under a tremendous amount of scrutiny this morning. I guess really the question is how worried should this guy be? Don Malarczyk, would you kick things off for us, please?
Sure, Julie. I mean, I would be very worried if I was him. I hope he has sought good counsel. I'm sure that the officers here are looking at, who supplied these drugs that caused the 3 fatalities. I'm sure that they are going through cell phone records, text messages, and really the criminal culpability lies with the person who brought and supplied those drugs, even if he or she didn't know it was laced with fentanyl. So that's really, I think, the issue that law enforcement has to focus on right now.
Appreciate it, Don. Kirk Nurmi, to you next, please. Your thoughts.
I think Don's exactly right. I mean, that digital footprint related to the fentanyl, and was it consumed knowingly? Who brought it, right? Just because this was hosted at this individual's home, he's under particular scrutiny. He's survived, what have you. But there's so many questions that aren't answered yet related to the consumption of fentanyl, whether it was knowing. Also, what are the circumstances of these 3 men being outside the house and the surviving member of this group being inside the house? What facilitated that? What kind of criminal liability could come from that? And like Don said, if he has good counsel, he is laying low, he's keeping quiet during this investigation because these questions are unanswered, and there could be criminal liability if he's culpable in some of these regards.
Right, appreciate it, Kirk. Last but certainly not least, Sonny Slaughter, your thoughts here, please.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Julie. I agree with my co-guest that this is definitely an issue about liability, and the investigators are trying to determine who had the cocaine laced with fentanyl, and who is the supplier. They're going to try to trace that all the way back to see what kind of criminal ring might be going on, and how did they have access, how often they may have used, and who is going to ultimately face potential charges in these murders.
Thank you for that, Sonny. Great points from you all. We're going to stand by. So many more questions that are unanswered than there are answered questions at this point on this one. We're switching gears, though, to another major case happening in Ohio, and a major witness on the stand. Sharon Payne, the grandmother of Casey Goodson Jr., described to the jury the moment that she found her grandson face down in her kitchen.
When I looked in the kitchen, I saw CJ laying on the floor, on his stomach. I saw his hands were extended, but the palms were flat, like it laying flat on the floor.
So if this is the floor?
They were down on the floor, laying flat on the floor.
Okay.
And I saw 2 bullet holes in his back. I saw one that was bigger than the other one, but it was between his shoulder blades, and then I saw another one down from there.
Okay.
But it was just a matter of seconds because I ran to call 911.
Can you imagine being a grandmother and having to find her grandchild like that in her home? He was shot as he was going into his home. Now, the defendant in this one is a former police deputy. His name is Jason Mead. He's being accused of murdering Casey Goodson Jr., and prosecutors say that he shot him 6 times in the back without giving him any verbal commands. He was not wearing a body camera at the time, so we don't have any video of the shooting. We know that Grandma Sharon Payne testified that her 23-year-old grandson did carry a firearm with him almost every time he left the house, and that he did have a concealed carry permit to do so. Now, the deputy had said he saw Goodson waving a gun at him prior to arriving at the house, and that was what led to what wound up being a fatal shooting. But the state has evidence that Casey Goodson Jr. was carrying sandwiches in one hand and car keys and house keys in the other when he was shot. Now, the defense team is saying that this is a justifiable homicide, that the defendant, the former cop, was in fear of his life when he fired those shots. Now, let's bring back in our guests and talk about that defense and how difficult this will be on this case. Don Malarczyk, I've got to start with you again. You're licensed to practice in Ohio. You've done many death penalty cases, very high-profile cases. You're certainly no stranger to those kinds of cases. And this one, wow. I mean, back in 2020, this happened. It got tons of attention. This case has been scrutinized for years leading up to this time of trial. What are your thoughts on this defense team, and do they have a chance here?
You know, Julie, I think the defense team is doing a really good job of asking the right questions. And, you know, I've represented police officers who have been charged with misconduct. And it's honestly, it's different, right? And what I mean by that is there were 2 officers who testified for the prosecution in the beginning of their case. And the defense attorneys asked both of those police officers, well, if someone was pointing a gun at you, would you consider that a deadly threat? And one of the officers said yes. Second officer, they asked, well, even if a person is not looking at you and they have their back towards you, if that person has a gun, could that be a deadly threat? And that officer said yes. Now, obviously, these defense attorneys knew that the answer was going to be helpful for them, but this is the kind of case where you're going to get favorable testimony, even out of the prosecution's witnesses in chief. So, yes, I think they do have a good chance of establishing self-defense on behalf of Officer Mead.
That's a good point, Don. That's a good point. And I'm sure that's what you teach, right? You know, when you have a witness who's adverse to your case, you try to get something that is positive and going to advance your case. So thank you for that. Kirk Nurmi, you know, staying with the defense angle here, you know, was this a justifiable homicide? What would you like to add to what Don just said in terms of strategy, please?
Well, yeah, if you're defending this case, you want as many law enforcement witnesses, whether they come from your side of the fence or the state side of the fence, to come up and give credibility to your case, to say that this was justified, because that brings an air of justification to it that negates, for example, the emotional testimony we just saw of the grandmother seeing her grandson lying dead on her floor. So that's the kind of thing that you want to do. It becomes a very intellectual case from that standpoint, right? And, you know, when you think about shots to the back and self-defense, for the normal person, you'd say, no, that's crazy. But now for an officer, people might open their ears a little bit, but the only way they're going to open that is standing on what I would call quasi-expert testimony, because it's still suspicious. They're going to have to hang their hat on that kind of testimony.
Appreciate it, Kirk. Sonny Slaughter, someone have a different question for you, please. Doing consulting work on trials as you do, something that troubles me, and it's a fact and nobody can help, is that this officer was not wearing his body camera at the time. We don't have video. He's the only person who can give an account. There weren't any other witnesses who can testify. It's really his word, you know, against the state's word. What might the state do in terms of strategy here, like focusing in on the body camera footage? Would you explore department policy? Tell me what you might do in terms of advising the state on how to kind of push back at the one narrative here.
So that's a very good question. Thinking about policy and process, Ohio body cam footage. Why wasn't, if he was supposed to have his camera on, why didn't he have his camera on? At what time was his camera potentially off? Did he come out and start his service with his body cam on and at some point turn it off? I would also be looking at camera footage in the area. What was he doing prior to? Who else has known him to have aggressive tactics against individuals in the communities? How many complaints has he previously had? How many of those complaints, whether justifiable or not, were investigated properly? What did IA determine from their investigative lens? And is there federal officers looking at it?
Oh, that's all, excellent advice there. We will watch for that, Sunny, as we're going to go there live. We have our cameras there. These are things we definitely need to look for. Those questions need to be asked. Big thanks to you all. Don Milarczyk, Kirk Nurmi, you have to say goodbye, and a big thank you to you both for lending us your expertise. Sunny Slaughter, we're going to look forward to seeing you a little later. You'll be rejoining us at 9 a.m., so thank you for that. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, this is what's next on Opening Statements.
You're charged with murder, kidnapping, rape.
Yes, ma'am.
You know a guy by the name of Zach Adams?
Yes, ma'am.
In the courtroom.
Right there.
It's that guy we saw on the stand there, co-defendant.